Hey, can you see
Yep.
me? Right on. I love the braids. Yeah, the braids.
Oh, thank you. I decided to be a little creative today. I don't know what else to do with long hair.
Decided to be a little creative today. Um, so I might be a little loopy. I several hours out of umbilical hernia surgery, so I was just under. So I'm doing
What?
fine. Yeah,
What? Okay, we'll talk
yeah.
later about that. I don't even know what that is.
It's just a belly button hernia from from lifting too heavy weights when I was younger, and yeah, it's just they sew up your belly button, and I was put under. So if I'm a little loopy, just be forewarned. That's all.
Okay, gotcha.
So all right, so we're talking about people pleasing. People pleasing. Let's start with a definition. So prioritizing other people's needs at the expense of your own needs, and usually at the expense of your own well-being. So really prioritizing other people's needs at the expense of your own well-being, I would say something along those lines. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I actually think this is something that is carried on from generation to generation because being female and being a mother, you're supposed to cater to everybody else's needs before your own. So you're usually the last one at the table, the last one getting out of the house, getting ready, get everything going on. So yeah, people pleasing is a real thing, and it's a big thing because I feel like we feel guilty the moment we start wanting to take ourselves into consideration and do something for ourselves first. There's a
Yeah.
huge guilt with that.
Yeah. What do you mean by guilt?
So, like for instance, um if me eating, I'm just going to use this as an example. I want to eat first before everyone else on the table. To me it makes sense because that way when everyone's eating I can sit and enjoy and then not be the last one to sit at the table and everyone's done and then eating cold food, or just taking actions for yourself, um and disregarding what other people's needs, like for instance taking a spa day and then you're taking the time for yourself, and then maybe your partner or whatever says, no, I need you to come here to help me, and it's like, no, I have a spa day dedicated for me, honor that. But
Yes.
then you start feeling guilty because they need you, but they'll be okay, but you have this time dedicated for yourself.
Yeah. So in response to what you said, first I want to honor the gender roles, and no matter how we want to make things equal, women become mothers, and with mothers there's an instinctual uh, desire and need and responsibility for all those reasons that we know that exists. And there also has been the repression of women, and both by male energy, because what masculine energy does, it dominates, and it has dominated the nurturing, holding space, yielding, acquiescing energy that females, well, not all females, but feminine energy can have. So we're talking about feminine versus masculine characteristics. And does it mean man or woman? No, no. I mean, I can speak for myself and say that I have plenty of feminine characteristics as well as masculine characteristics. As a matter of fact, I try to keep those balanced in myself as much as I can, because you end up being either a pushover or a toxic masculine, a-hole. So much of the time, not to overgeneralize, but that can happen. But I want to honor the position that women have been placed in, which is to be the nurturers, to be the caregivers, to be the ones who have to sacrifice to us. I mean, think about, having a child is the ultimate form of sacrifice. So not the ultimate, that would be dying, but it's a pretty huge form of sacrifice. And you as a mother, there's so much that you do. So there's that feminine sort of acquiescing that isn't always honored in our society, but it's expected
Hmm.
in our society. So I think that's a big one. It's expected, but it's not honored in the business world, in our world of achieving and showing what you have. And this Western started in America culture that's taken over Asia and everywhere else, which is I must achieve, I must get, I must do, which takes a lot of let's really call it what it is, a lot of self-focus and a lot of egoic um, fortitude, a lot of need to forge ahead while taking care of yourself. Yet there's this people pleasing energy that, and this is a lot of what I would love to address, that if kept in balance, kept in check, is the natural, beautiful, compassionate, giving energy that is compatible with so much spirituality, that's compatible with friendship, connection, with love, with so many things that we need in this world to help it evolve. But when it is lived without presence, without being conscious, without checking ourselves, then this people pleasing can take over if it's a tendency that we have, this feminine, nurturing, loving, acquiescing energy that needs to be in, that is, we'd all be better off to possess more of if we don't have it naturally, but it can get out of control and allow us to be pushovers, allow us to be doormats, and to be resentful, and to wondering why we're not appreciated. There's a lot there to unpack, but I think that may be a good place to start.
I think there should be definitely a distinction between, let's say, for people who are working in the world of hospitality, right, where their job is to please the customer, because that drives the tourism, that drives the business, or what have you, and then being a people pleaser in your personal life. So, in both cases, if it be your job that you have to please people, I think in both cases you need to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And it's establishing those boundaries and really defining for you what those boundaries are. What do you
Yes.
consider being a pushover? What do you consider, okay, this is a line, a fine balance because this is my job, or I feel comfortable with it.
Yeah. So I really, the word that comes to me again is unpack. I think it's going to be really helpful to unpack why we do it, so we can call ourselves out, be aware, call ourselves forward would be a better way to say it, and then also to see what our motives are when we're doing it, and yet to see when there's a healthy manifestation of giving and there's an unhealthy manifestation of giving in ourselves. Do you think that would be good to unpack?
Yeah, because I think and then this will be later on, because I think and I'm only going to say it so I don't forget it, because I'll forget it if I say I'll wait till later. Um, the the people pleasing becomes, I feel like it comes like part of codependency at some point.
Well, it does. Codependency is, I mean, a lot of that definition applies with people pleasing, which is to categorize somebody else's needs above your own at the expense of your own happiness and well-being.
Mhm.
So that's definitely what codependency is. It is how people pleasing, when it's exacerbated, shows up in relationships, and it's not good for either person. It's not good for either person, because when someone's an enabler, the person who's being enabled is not able to be whole as easily and to be as authentic. And so I think it's this is really about being our authentic selves as much as possible, because I think it's very important to say that these things that we do, whether it's people pleasing, whether it's being a know-it-all, whether it's being someone who establishes control over other people, and it can be too into power dynamics, whatever the quirk we have, they're survival tactics, and they're there for us at a young age to have gotten by and to have gotten through our childhood, and then we carry these habits into our adulthood, and they may have been good survival tactics and maybe sometimes help us now, but those tactics can be at the detriment of ourselves and our happiness, and the way ultimately how we can serve others. And I think that really comes under the umbrella of at the detriment to our authenticity. I think that's a beautiful way to sum it up in the way that I've understood it.
And it's also a disservice to your own growth. If you don't learn how to set those boundaries, those fine lines in the sand or whatever, I feel like you're also losing out on becoming something better or bigger for yourself, which adds up to your true authenticity. Because we're not supposed to be in a box. We're not packaged nicely. We're all different. We all come in all sorts of different sizes and shapes, and we should honor that. And so to be able to put our foot down to say no more, or just say, okay, you know what, that was too much, let's reel it back in, is really a good point of feeling empowered for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. So I a teacher of mine, Russ Hudson, who has helped teach me the Enneagram, which is a personality typology, for lack of a better way of saying it. That's what it's used for, and it's a way to show how we get stuck in these survival tactics, and it becomes the place in which we live. And when we do that, we're not completely authentically ourselves. We're, as he says it, and this is what I'm getting to, it's not to learn where we get stuck in our personality and where we live, where we have these patterns that become kind of who we think we are. Learning about that is not to get you into a box, it's to get you out of a box.
Mhm.
I love that he says that, to get you out of that box so you can be more fully who you are. So let's get into what people pleasing is in our psychic and in our. I got a little got a little distracted by your awesome
Oh,
smile.
thanks.
You have such a great smile. I'm not flirting with you. I think you have a great smile. So yes, it's why do we people please? What is the reason that we do that? And what are our motives? So I think it's really helpful to point out that when we're being compassionate and giving, when we are being, even a better way to say it is empathetic, when we're being other centered and we're giving, that is one thing. And people pleasing is a completely other thing, even though they're related, right? Because the first one that I mentioned, being someone who is empathetic and gives from an empathetic place, that is giving, not wanting anything in return, and giving without a motive, without much of a motive. But when we're people pleasing, we're doing it because we don't feel good inside. And we want, by doing for another person, by pleasing that other person through our actions, through our behaviors, we are doing it because we're trying to manipulate a situation and get that person to make us feel better. So I think that's huge, not to shame us for being people pleasers, because we can all fall into it, no matter how assertive and, direct we can be. We all know what it's like to be a people pleaser, but it's good to point out that this is a survival strategy. It's something that it really dampens our authenticity and our happiness because we're denying ourselves when we do it. But the first step, I really believe, at least in my experience and understanding, is to call ourselves out on why we're doing it. We're doing it because we are afraid, because we are insecure, because we don't feel good enough inside. A confident person who's present and totally in themselves, owning themselves, can really be grounded enough to be truly empathetic and to give without needing things in return, and to give it. And a simple example of that would be holding a door for somebody because you want to feel better in that moment and have that person smile and say, oh, thank you, or for you to boost your self-esteem, or holding a door just because it makes you feel good. And you do it, and just the difference in holding the door and what the motive is, why you're doing it, and what place you're coming from, what your energy's like. That is the simple difference between giving from a place of empathy and giving from a place of people pleasing. Does that make sense to you?
I am 1,000,000% guilty of that without even realizing. I was doing people pleasing because I came from a place of low self esteem, and I was using it, now that I can reflect on it now, as a manipulation to maintain that person with me, to keep that person with me. The mentality was, the more I do for them, they'll want me more. But that didn't work out in any way, shape, or form. So I definitely resonated. And you know what's crazy is that when you're doing the people pleasing, you're not realizing you're doing it. Because I like to give just for the sake of giving. Like, I don't ask for anything in return other than
You
just
do.
common courtesy. Just like,
You
be
do.
chill, like that's all I want. Just be chill or whatever. um so to me it was like second nature, not realizing that I was really digging a huge hole for myself. And the more I tried to help, the more I tried to be better, the more I tried to work things out, the worse it got for me. But it really took me out. I had no idea that I was self-sabotaging myself
Yeah.
by being the enabler. I didn't realize that me giving so much was enabling the other person. I didn't understand. I didn't know nothing. So I just fell into it without realizing.
So I think you would be a good character study, Nada, because, and not to put you under the spotlight, I'm putting you under the spotlight, and I really want to prop you up a little bit and tell you that I've said this in other podcasts. You really, it's rare, in my opinion, the way you give, and it's such a joy, and you do so much giving. You're doing this right now in this podcast. You're doing this for the love of getting things out there that help other people. And you are not coming from a place of people pleasing. I would be awfully surprised if that was going on. Right. And it shows. And so, first of all, just when you're doing these podcasts, whomever it's with, tell me your experience of how it makes you feel when you're coming from a place of just giving without wanting things in return, and coming from a place of empathizing with other human beings.
So when I do these podcasts, is like you said, I feel like I've gone through so much that if I can help anybody hear what I've experienced, to help them look at things differently in their lives, or maybe help them feel better about themselves, that they weren't the only ones that have gone through that experience. That's all I care about. Like, I may not never hear about it or know about it, but I know, like you and I have experience. We've had like weird live Instagram lives where things are like, that was weird. And then we find out like 1 or 2 weeks later that there was somebody listening that needed to hear
Yes.
that message. It was like, whoa. I find fulfillment in that. When I do the other podcasts for my YouTube channel, is because is for me, it's straight. about curiosity and my thirst for knowledge. And I want to see everybody succeed. I want to help everybody succeed in their endeavors. As long as, to me, it's defined as doing a service to others, for others, I want to help them succeed in any which way or form. And that makes me happy seeing that they're getting themselves out and about and fulfilling their dreams. I don't know. I get a kick out of that. I like it.
Well, and I think this is human nature. I do that Find Your Life's Purpose workshop, and it really getting with the energy of finding your life's purpose. So much of the time I found by going into philosophers and teachers, spiritual mentors, just all these people who kind of talk about this finding purpose, which is finding a way to feel useful in our lives. It starts with stop asking the world, what can I get? And start asking the world, what can I give? And look at what you've been up to in your life where things kind of work out. Now, I've been watching your podcast start to just unfold and work out. And I don't want to get too mystical or woo woo about this. It's just like you're good at things. We're better at things a lot of times when we're coming up from a place of giving. A lot of the times when we have a gift, it's easier to give it, but we get in our own way, not just with how things work out, because when our quote ego gets in the way, we can get people's noses out of joint and people, aren't flowing with us. But also, we're so much happier coming down to that simple example of when we open the door just to do it. Try it for an experiment. This just came to me, so maybe it needed to be said. We open the door for someone at Starbucks because we want to be a good person. There's usually a joy that comes up inside of us, and we connect with that person in a way that's really happy. There's no difference between that energy and the energy that you're coming at with your podcasting, that you just want to be of service. And I see, when I was watching you smile and the smile that you're doing right now, I just really enjoy, and I'm allowing myself to be authentic, and just in taking you in and enjoying the authenticity of your happiness and your joy that you're experiencing by allowing yourself to be used to hold a space or to share of yourself or whatever. And when you do that, you feel better and things work out better usually, right?
It is. And you know what's so funny is I'm getting my first taste of trolling. Of I'm getting trolled on these podcasts. I see the people's comments, and you know, before I used to get triggered, like, why? Like, what did I say? Like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all, type of situation. But now it's like, okay, if that's how you feel, thank you for watching because you
Right.
watched. You made a comment, you know.
Well, it's a sign you're doing something good.
That's how I say it. But it takes away from when I was a people pleaser. Like I really cared about what people said about me, and I try to fix it. I was basically trying to be someone who I wasn't, right? So I'm over that. I'm not doing that anymore. So I welcome the trolling, and I'm like, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Thumbs up.
So would you be willing to be a little, that's really cool. First of all, I love hearing that, and that it's good to see these things unfold for you like this. So would you be willing to be vulnerable and talk about when you've come from a place of people pleasing, meaning when you didn't feel okay in yourself, because you're human and you've done that too, whether it's in a relationship or whatever it is, how that made you feel, how that turned out, and the consequences you had to pay for
Woo!
that.
Those are some heavy things.
Yeah.
It's mostly been relationships. I don't really remember my childhood. I think it's because my dad was always working and, whatever it is, it is. Um, but in my relationships, I was, especially this last one, I was compared a lot to other women. Why don't you dress like her? Why aren't you an entrepreneur like her? look at the way she carries herself, and it was very painful. And you know me, I'm very down to earth. I'm like almost like a dude, like, what's it called? Tomboy, where I'm just chill. I love outdoor sports, mountain biking. I'm not the typical girl, and I'm just whatever, down for whatever. I'm that ride or die, person. You want to go skydiving? Hell yeah, I'm down. You want to go for a walk? I'm down for that too. But so when I was being compared a lot, I always wondered, well, if I'm not who you want me to be, then why'd you marry me? Like, it didn't make logical sense. I'm sorry I don't spend an hour and a half doing my hair or, buying the top of the line clothes. I have kids, I work, whatever. What ended up doing was it was a huge slap in the face where it got to the point where I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what or who I wanted to be. Did I want to please this person to be that trophy wife? Did I want to change everything that I liked about myself? Um, and I was lost. I didn't know what to do. Because you don't get married to get divorced. So I was dedicated to making everything work. If they wanted me to dress differently, I will. If they wanted me to talk differently, I will. Um, everything was just different, and I couldn't understand why, but I did it. I tried. I failed, and then at the end of the day, I decided I'm out. I
How
just
did you
cannot.
try and fail? Tell me how you tried and failed.
No matter what I did, it was never enough, ever.
Okay.
It was just constant condescending remarks, lots of blame shifting, no accountability. And yeah, no matter how much I tried to set boundaries and stand up for myself, it just wasn't working. And so I'm like, you know what? This is not a relationship. This is just a one man show. There's no room for me. I need to get out.
Yes. Yeah, there's a victim in a relationship that there are different roles that we play,
Hmm.
right? The perpetrator and the rescuer. Victim, perpetrator, rescuer. So, can I be direct?
Yep.
So, that part of that energy is victim energy, right? Because there is, I'm glad you own that,
Mhm.
my friend. So what we're talking about is there's a lot of responsibility he has for how I feel, which is victim energy, and then freedom can come when, as we know from what, from taking
Oh,
responsibility, right?
I didn't know that was a question. I thought you were good. That was a statement. And you were going to continue going.
Yeah. From taking responsibility, right? And
Yeah.
so, how responsible were you for being in that relationship?
Oh, 100%. So
So,
after,
you chose to be with him,
yeah,
and then,
exactly. So after I separated, my question was, what is it about me that I continuously attract these type of people that I need to figure out about myself? So I put the accountability because I chose him. The signs were there. I was just so happy that somebody wanted to love me and marry me and have kids with me, whatever. The signs were there. I completely ignored it. That's my bad. That is my bad.
mhm,
So I took full accountability, and it's easy for me to blame shift. It's easy for me to say that he was the asshole,
right.
you know?
And it would be fine to do that if that worked. And I'm not speaking, I was doing two things there. I was exercising lack of people pleasing, and I was
Mhm.
just trying to be a friend in that situation, but also I'm coming from experience because I know what it's like to blame. Everybody does. You
Mhm.
know, the cliche, when there's one point finger pointing out. I said this on the first podcast, there are three fingers pointing back at you, right?
Yeah.
And what that means is when I'm pointing the finger at somebody else, there are more reasons that I have to take responsibility for. That person was there. I chose to be with them. I chose to marry them. I'm speaking theoretically about parallels in my own life.
Mhm.
And then I chose to put up with it. So I will be 100% vulnerable now, and this is very vulnerable since I was talking about victim, perpetrator, rescuer. So this is going in a little different direction, but I think it's worth saying. I chose in my personal development journey when I was a good deal younger to be involved with this personal development guy who called himself a guru. And the way that I chose to work with that was to surrender, to acquiesce, to to give myself in a way that was quote spiritual by listening to that person at the expense, and this is people pleasing, of my own intuition,
Mm.
at the expense of my own self love, because there is this ancient spiritual Eastern based in Hinduism um, practice of if you surrender, then you surrender your ego. And then when you surrender your ego, you become enlightened. So there was a selfish reason. So the way I had to take responsibility for the abuse, and this person was a narcissist.
Mm.
And I am not a psychologist, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a psychologist to figure out what his deal was. Now, I blamed and had so much anger when the lights came on. In one moment, I realized I need to leave. But, and I hope you're listening, the person who I'm talking about, because I don't care. So I had to take responsibility for I chose to be there because I had my own selfish reasons. I wanted something called enlightenment, which I don't really think exists because we're always going to be human. But I projected on him this thing that he was supposed to have, this thing that I wanted, and I was willing to put up with all of it. And I did it at the expense not only of what my own relationship with myself, which had to take a lot of time to be built back up,
Mm.
but also at the expense of relationships in my life. Now, what people can sense, because I fell in this people pleasing mode, I did not expect to talk about this, but I fell in this people pleasing mode. People can smell it on you. They can feel, people can tell when you are acquiescing. I love that word acquiesce, which means to surrender, to give yourself over to kind of give parts of yourself up in being flexible, overly flexible. That acquiescing, um, it came out not just in the way I would my body language, but in things that I would say, like, I don't know, what do you think? Or let me ask your opinion because I'm not sure. And then I would put myself down and say, yeah, I'm usually not good at this kind of stuff. This is all people pleasing. And the whole point that I'm getting to is loving myself was something I was good at. And people pleasers are good at loving. I'm sorry, let me
The
switch that around.
other
Loving
way.
other people was what I was really good at. But the person that it's just important, it is important for me to love myself. And if I'm denying love for myself, I am denying other people the gifts that I can give them. And it is just as evil to be unkind to myself, in my opinion, as it is to be unkind to others. But our religions don't always support that. Our 12 step groups don't always support that. I know I'm getting a little gangster here with the way I'm talking, but I have been helped allegedly, let's say at points in my life by 12 step programs, maybe, even though they're anonymous. And I have been helped with religions and spiritual things. They all have beautiful stuff in them there, but people come in there and to have power over you, they tell you to deny yourself. And that's bullshit. Learning to not be, I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I have to own my own shit because not owning my own shit has really hurt me and hurt my ability to really use myself in the service of others. It's It's bullshit, that this false humility that comes from selfishness and insecurity, that kind of people pleasing is not okay. Real giving coming from a place of confidence and power, that being in yourself, in your body, and being present with yourself and other people, that's when true love happens. That's when true giving happens, and there's a difference. And that's what I was trying to differentiate there. So thanks for listening to my rant on that.
I
I didn't
feel
expect that to
your
come out.
passion. Ah.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to bring it back to what you said originally, because this is where the system fails, where your
Yes.
guru failed, where the 12 step, maybe not anonymous, failed, religions for sure failed.
Yes.
Trusting your intuition. We knew it. We felt it. It felt awkward and we ignored it.
I have a friend who was walking down the a path, and he got this feeling like he was scared and something wasn't right, and then he almost stepped on a rattlesnake. That is the intuition that we have. And why do we have it? Not some like impractical woo-woo thing. No, we evolved to be able to be self-protective, to take care of ourselves so that tiger doesn't jump out at us. If something doesn't feel right, if somebody isn't making us feel right, well, maybe there is something to pay attention to. So that's that point you make about paying attention to your, ow, I just got hernia surgery today. I just grabbed my gut. My gut is where my intuition is. That's where we hold our intuition. So our gut is something to be listened to, not just our heart, not just our head, but that intuitive voice that says, no, don't go this way, go that way. This is about you protecting yourself and taking care of you. Because as the cliche goes, when the plane is going down, you know what I'm going to say,
Mhm.
the oxygen mask goes down, you maybe have your child next to you, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, or else you're not going to be able to take care of anybody else. Then you put it on your child or your loved one. So we have to take care of ourselves. Yet when we hear this and we think to ourselves, oh, that's so wonderful, oh, that's so great, I've done that. I think that sounds so good, but we don't do it. We don't do it always, and I haven't done it. Whew, I'm getting
Yeah.
worked up. Sorry.
And I'm going to tell you why it's so important. I read like 3 years ago, this is with Jeffrey Dahmer, that he was interested in some girl and he kept persisting to go on a date. She finally said yes, and they met up at a restaurant. And she had told her best friend that she didn't feel right about it, but she was going to be at this location and what have you. And she was saying, and she lived, and she documented that looking straight at him, it was like looking right through him. There
Yes.
was no soul, no nothing. And
Yes.
for her, her spidey senses, oh, I'm getting the chills now. Her spidey senses were just going off the chain. She excused herself, went to the bathroom, called her best friend, and she pieced out. And it was Jeffrey Dahmer, who then had, serial killings afterwards. That's the intuition. That's how powerful it is. And it sucks because we'll listen. We just like we're selective listeners, we're selective listeners to our own intuition, because we want to push the envelope, because we don't want to believe that it's a no. Like if you're in a relationship, but no, but he seems so nice and
Right.
he's so cool, but your intuition is saying, no, girl, no, it's not right. There's something weird, like, flag, flag, flag. But you're like, no, he's so cool. Oh my God, he has a nice car, whatever. He's got his shit together. And you deny that. That's where
Yeah.
that's where the problems come.
Yeah, but and underneath, let's say that he has a nice car and he's handsome and funny and all those kind of things. Underneath that is the subtext is, yeah, but he's so much like my dad. The unhealthy relationship I had with my dad, and we don't want to blame anybody, but we have to take responsibility for the fact that so much of the time we're playing out relationships that we're trying to fix from our past.
Mhm.
And when we do that, we are unconscious, we're not present. So that going back to responsibility, taking responsibility for ourselves, we can say, oh, it's my relationship with my father. And maybe, some people, we have to have compassion for ourselves and compassion for our friends, that we're all walking around with different degrees of pain and different degrees of wounds. And our wounds are attracted to each other. I mean, it's important to say that a narcissist, and it's an overused word, sure,
Mm-hmm.
and I am not a psychologist or anything of those sorts, true. But it is a known fact that a narcissist has a very weak sense of self. They don't feel secure in themselves. And they have to grab onto other people to make them feel better. They have to achieve to make themselves feel better. We know classic examples in history and people that are in the public eye at the moment, not or any other time. But I didn't say anything.
Nope.
Uh,
Anonymous.
so 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 yeah, we have these examples, but first thing that since we're talking about living consciously, to look at these people is to have compassion, because we can't be free if we don't have compassion or empathy. Compassion is feeling for someone, but empathy is knowing that you have that in yourself. We all have narcissism. Shit, I have tons of narcissism in
Mm-hmm.
myself. There's it's I'm not free from that. And I would venture to say that someone who thinks that they are is very deluded. So my point is to have compassion for these people who prey on people pleasers, because they are sick too. We know that we are with people with an equal amount of wounds, roughly, and we're there. And so the person who is the it can be a victim in a situation, and they're playing that role in the people pleasing victim. You could be at a party and just meet somebody and be like, oh well, hey, I'm not very good at this, and you're looking away when you're talking to the person, not feeling direct, and kind of you have a soft voice. There's nothing wrong with these things, but and then you're kind of asking questions like, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? It's not this mysterious thing. This person who preys on people like that because they have a lack of a sense of self, and they want to be able to put someone else down and control someone else. They're like, wow, I found the perfect match for me. And that narcissist may feel love for that person who, we have different levels of narcissistic qualities, right? And that person is going to be like, wow, that person's just like my cousin or my parent or whoever was raising me or whatever. And it's familiar. And then it's like, wow, we're in love. But it's trauma bonding. And we get to play that out until we start to become more aware of what's happening inside of us. So I've heard. I've never experienced that. I'm totally kidding. I have gone through that a lot in my own life. So,
So what I love about what you said is that like attracts like. And you are absolutely right. Because if you're what you call an empath and then you have a narcissist, you guys both have similar traumas, which is why you're attracting to each other, whether lack of validation, lack of self-esteem, but you come from very similar I guess issues, so traumas, whatever it is. So like attracts like. I can tell you that had I not gone through that experience and finally woken up or whatever you want to call it, I would continue the cycle and still disregard my
yes.
intuition because I was not in a place in my mind where I thought anything was wrong with me. I honestly didn't know that I had these tendencies. So that's one thing. It's a very hard reality when you say, I manifested exactly what I wanted because that's who I am.
Yeah, and I love what you said, because we have these painful situations. We go through the suffering in relationships, and we can look at it as, wow, that person's a jerk, and then I don't learn anything. And look at what you did. You were like, wow, I was hurt, and then you shifted to what do I need to learn in myself. And I know you've been through a big journey of looking at yourself, putting the light of attention on yourself. And so it's like if we're going along life, as I think you're alluding to, you're going along in life where things are just hunky dory and everything's going great. Well, that's great. And who wouldn't welcome that? But we're not learning things as easily. So when there's pain, there's an opportunity to learn almost always, unless it's just like, maybe we have this horrible loss in our life, then we get to learn how to grieve consciously, and so everything that doesn't feel good is an opportunity, I think, for whatever it's worth, and it's not worth much, but what matters is what people think for themselves when they look into it themselves, is what's my experience, and when have I learned, when have I not learned, when have I grown, what is bringing me to more and more happiness.
And
Yeah.
what's also what I like what you said was that everybody has different levels of narcissism, which is absolutely true.
Yes.
I mean, you have to. That's just part of finding your balance. That doesn't mean that narcissists don't know love. In their minds, they're righteous. They're loving you. It may not be what we call a healthy love, it's called a toxic love, but in their minds, they're loving you to their full extent, not realizing what they're doing. I mean, I've spent years studying this.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very fascinating and weird dynamic, because in the path when you're very compassionate and you're like, how is that called love? No way, man. Like, no one does that if you love somebody. But in their minds, it is love. And and it applies to everybody, and they have different levels, just like there's different levels of narcissism, there's different levels of love, of how they define love. And that's something to keep in mind too when you're looking at yourself as the victim. If you're going through this, just starting to go through this or realizing this, maybe that's all they can give. Are you okay with that? Or are you going to do something about yourself to change your circumstance?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And so we have these pains that we go through, and what was I just about to say about that? That was the I just lost my thought that I was just talking about. I was on anesthesia. If you what was it that you just finished up with?
That everyone loves. It's just a different types of love, different
Oh,
levels of love.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think it's really important because this word narcissism is thrown around so much, and I think with good intentions,
Yeah.
for the people pleasing, to bring it back with what we're talking about, with a people pleaser, an empath, and someone who's more likely to kind of put somebody else up and let them be the star in any kind of way, and then someone who really can't see you clearly because they're so much looking at themselves. It's based obviously in insecurity. I think it's really important to point out that one thing that Eckhart Tolle said, who I like to quote a lot: if your past were his past, your pain were his pain.
Mm-hmm.
So your conditioning, your genetics, your pain and conditioning was all the same, then you would have acted and done the exact same thing. And unfortunately, it's the people who are mass murderers out there, they probably were born with a genetic defect. They don't have the ability to have empathy. How beautiful is it to feel empathy? And people who don't have the capacity to feel empathy, there's really the only response to feel is compassion for someone who can't. It doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for doing horrible things to other people, but as Sam Harris, the uh, philosopher amongst other things, talked about, there was that person who killed all those people in the tower
Mm-hmm.
all those years ago, and I believe this is the murderer I'm talking about. He left a suicide note saying, "Do an autopsy and look at my brain because there's something wrong with me." And I'm feeling a little bit emotional because for someone who is actually a murderer, because he said that I'm in so much pain that and so much anger and rage that I don't know what's wrong with me. And there was a tumor they found pressing on his brain. So we don't know what someone's going through. The only It's not to say they're evil and I'm good. It's to say this person's doing the best they can, but what is it my responsibility? My responsibility to that person who couldn't have done any better, that I chose to be in, that he was a cult leader basically, that I chose to be with many years ago when I was younger and more impressionable, to have compassion for who that person is, but also to stand up and say, I hope you're listening because I'm talking about you and I'm not afraid of you. And if somebody like you comes in my path again, no, I'm not buying it. And because I'm able to be more in myself than I was back then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a hard experience, and it's not for the faint of heart. It really it questions everything in your life, but once you get over on the other side, it's so beautiful. There's so many things, and I think the best part about it is that you find your life purpose afterwards. And
That's true.
for me, that's just been like the most amazing thing ever. Where that's gonna take me or you, because you found your life purpose too, is we don't know yet. We're like, experimenting, and we're trying things out, and getting to know each other, or getting to know ourselves better in that sense, where we're coming from a full place of servitude for others. I think that, to me, is worth everything that I went through. I'm a better person. I'm a better mother. I am aware. I am conscious, even, and I'm not perfect. Believe me. We talked about this last time, last podcast, where we have the shower conversations.
Yeah.
uh, they still happen, but it's better controlled, and your life is just completely different. So where you're suffering right now and crying, life on the other side is so worth it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we brought purpose into this because there's a way that we serve other people naturally, and that's authentic. Now, obviously, if I was trying to be this spiritual person I wouldn't have been acting kind of irate and erratic in this, because I just want to be myself and be, but I want to be authentic. But there is an authentic you that is being broadcast no matter what you are doing. And that word broadcast came from me hearing that narcissist years ago. I took that from him. So you want to think it's not all bad that I went through. He was saying we're always broadcasting things. So good for you. Um, and whoever your name is, I'm not going to say. But with that gift that we have, that we're always giving in every moment, the enthusiasm and joy and happiness and this smile that you have given when you're happy about things, and the accessibility and openness that you do in your interviews is really serving so much bigger than yourself. But the only thing that we have to do is to be ourselves, and to bring it full circle. People pleasing is never. It's just a tactic. It's not a natural, innate property that we have. Empathy and giving is, and we made the distinction between those two. Yeah, I know
Yes.
we have to wrap
I
up.
know we
We could
have to
keep
wrap
talking.
up, as now we're going to cut off, but that's a great place to rounded everything together. And it's look at yourself to see if you're a people pleaser, establish your own definition to feel what's comfortable for you, and just enjoy the journey.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Bye.